Thank you all for being here today, and I want to especially welcome some of our members of the He's a Day program who are joining us for the first time. Thank you for being here, and for the first time viewers that may be attending today, we do this every month, the second Tuesday, so I hope you'll return as your schedule allows. My name is Tom Higgins. I live on Madison Street with my wife Mandy, who's right here. We have lived in Chelsea for 23 years, and we have two grown girls that live in the state. And I love to ask questions. I love to learn the story behind the persons, people that I meet. And today is a great example of that. So by way of introducing today's guest, I'll tell you that I have known today's guest a number of times. I've seen him a number of times. I've been in his house. We've been at different parties together. And we never really said more than hello, Merry Christmas, goodbye, that sort of thing. And so with certainty, I can tell you that I know today's guest so much better than I ever did, and I hope that you'll gain a better understanding of who he is. So please welcome Jim Alford. Okay, Jim.
Okay.
So let's start chronologically, at least at first. We'll talk about your early life. And so my job is just to prompt you. You have so many great stories, so I hope that I do little talking and you tell your great stories. So early on, you were born in Minnesota, moved to Indiana, and then moved to Georgia.
Yay, Minnesota.
So tell us a little bit about your early life.
Well, I lived in Minnesota, I don't know, maybe 6-9 months. Dad was in the service, and then we did a couple other moves, and I ended up in northeast Indiana, near Angola, Indiana, probably about the age of 3. So Dad was a country doctor, and the hospital he practiced out of was in Angola, but he had an office in Hamilton Lake, where I was raised. And it was a town of about 350 people and a school of about 350. So Dad decided a lot of the medicine he was practicing was psychiatric, not necessarily physical medicine. So he'd always wanted to be a psychiatrist. So we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and he went to Emory University for psychiatric residency. So at the end of the 9th grade, the summer after my 9th grade, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I finished high school in Atlanta. Should I go on?
Let me ask you 2 prompts. So that was great. So I'm specifically interested in your dad, his family, his military background, and his occupation or his position in the Army was part of why you moved, I thought, as well.
Right. This is during World War II. The medical school, Indiana University Medical School, the Army took over the medical school, the military did, and so anybody in medical school at that time was automatically in the service as long as they could physically fit, and that's how Dad got in the service. He had 3 brothers. 2 were in Europe in the military, and 1 was in the Pacific in the military. So, and the one in the Pacific got killed. So I think that's the reason Dad never went out of the States. He did all his military career in the United States.
The other thing that struck me about your dad was it seems radical to upend a career and go into residency in Georgia when you're living in Indiana and move the whole family down there.
Well, his high school classmate also went to medical school. He and Dad went to medical school together, and he ended up at Emory University as a surgeon, and Dad had stopped by there to visit on a vacation trip, and Bill Van Fleet talked him into coming to Emory. So the decision was made like on vacation. He came home and said, "We're moving."
We're moving. There you go.
Right.
maybe a good way for us to learn a little bit about your dad and a young Jim Alford was a story about singing in choir.
Yeah, the singing in the choir, that started my religious training, I think you say. I was young, I was probably, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 8. And in this small town, the choir had wooden pews in the choir. You know, they had polished them that weekend, I guess. When I got there, I found that I could slide from one end to the other by just pushing off. And I could slide down and smash into my friend and then slide back and then do it again. And Dad was obviously in the congregation going like that. And I ignored him because I was in the choir and I knew he couldn't get to me. And the next thing I saw was Dad stepping over the altar rail, coming into the choir. He put me under his arm, he carried me down the center aisle, outside. In those days, you could use corporal punishment, and he did. Put me back under his arm, marched me back up the center aisle, set me back down in the choir. So I say that's the beginning of my religious training. I realized singing in the choir didn't make you necessarily a good Christian.
It was nice because they were all kids.
Yeah, we're all kids.
That was a great story. You've got so many good ones. So let's talk specifically about your family. Tell me about your siblings, how many you had.
I have 4 sisters, 1 older, 3 younger. The three of us older ones were really close in age. I have a sister about 20 months older than I am, and a sister that was about 20 months younger. And then my 2 youngest sisters were 6 and 8 years younger, so they were almost a different generation than the 3 older ones.
So it was Joan, Jim, and Georgia were the
With the
boom, boom, boom.
boom, boom, boom. And then Joan lives in Silver Maples. Georgia's passed away. Kathy is in South Carolina, and Pat is in Tallahassee, Florida.
Was it great, painful to be the only boy with all these girls?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, I had to cut the grass and do that sort of thing, but I didn't. They did the cooking and cleaning, etc. My little sisters really took care of me because they thought I was pretty cool in high school. It worked out pretty good.
Imagine that.
Yeah, that surprised me too.
So you mentioned your sister Georgia, and you've got a sweet, a little bit sad story about her later in life about a bear. You want to tell that now, or you want to wait?
We can tell now. This again is part of my, I guess, growth in believing. Georgia died of COVID. She contacted it in January, and she passed away in April of 2022. And her daughter Amy had said, "Mom, when you get to heaven, send me a sign. I want a sign." And George is always the jokester, said, "I'll send you a bear." And
Just like that.
just I'll send you a bear, instead of a bluebird or butterfly or anything.
Yeah, he could have picked that.
Right. So George passed away, and Janet and Amy were out on the deck, and a bear walked across the yard, sat down. The whole family got to go out and see the bear. They'd lived there 20 years and had never seen a bear in that area. So it sat there, we all watched it for a while, and then it got up, wandered off. But, it was a sign.
I don't usually believe in those sort of things, but if I would have seen that, it'd be hard not to.
Yeah, I mean, a butterfly you might think might, fly through, but a bear, yeah.
Okay, so well, I want to jump ahead to college, but I do want to ask you about this Janet Rackley that you met, and how did you guys meet?
Well, we met in high school. I'm guessing soon after I moved to Atlanta, we went to the same high school. And she asked me out on a date. You know, life's strange. She asked me out on a date, so I was 16, I could drive, and she was younger, so, I mean, 6 months younger. And I said, well, yeah, I guess you need to drive. You need a ride, huh? She said, no, I said, it's a date. The girls were having a party, and they were inviting guys to come to the party, so that's how we met. That was our first date. I was 16, she was 15.
That's a great story.
Oh,
Yeah.
those are good years.
So I watched one of your interviews with the high school students and said that lives well told, or lives well
Might as
lived.
well live, yeah.
And these two girls were interviewing you, and they said, how did you know she was the one?
Yeah.
Do you remember that question?
Yeah,
The
I
answer?
do. The answer is my mother told me she was.
This is the one.
I don't have any original thoughts.
It was an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
And that's great. So did she go to college with you? Were you at the same place?
No, I went off to Indiana University my first year, and then transferred back to the University of Georgia. She went to the University of Georgia, and I transferred back. We dated some, and then my college career was not stellar, so I got drafted.
Well, you should talk about your college career just for, at least you should,
Point out my grade point.
I think that'd be helpful.
I had a .8 average. And Dad and the Dean of Students decided I'd be better off in the Army than the streets of Athens, Georgia. So Dad drove up, picked me up, and drove me directly to a recruiting office. And so that was my first 2 years of college. And then, that's how I got into the service.
So I did think about this drive to the recruiting office or whatever it was, and I would be scared. I'd be terrified in that drive. And I wondered, was that something that you felt, or was it you had military in your family? Did you feel like, oh, this is my time?
I assume I was anxious at the time. I wasn't concerned about going in the military so much. It was tradition, and I could see I didn't have a lot of choices. I mean, it was either sign up for the draft or get drafted, and if I signed up for the draft, I felt like I'd have a little more power about where I might go. So I could join the Army for 3 years, or I could get drafted for 2 years, so I took the 2-year option.
So this is something I wanted to ask. So last month, I interviewed Jan Bernath, and John and I we videotape this, and we hope to put it on the Chelsea Senior Center YouTube page. And I was reviewing the video of Jan's talk, and at one point she talked about her early life and how she protested the war in Vietnam. And people applauded in the audience, and I didn't think anything about it because I was sitting here. But as I watched the video later, I saw that and I heard that, and Jim was in the audience, and I wondered how that made you feel, because I thought that was kind of awkward when I watched it.
When I got back from Vietnam, and I spent 2 years in Vietnam, when I got back, you didn't talk about the war. People were protesting the war. It wasn't popular, obviously. And the way I felt, and the way I think most of the people that were in the service felt, it was okay to protest the war. That wasn't our concern. We didn't want to go to war any more than any of the protests did. What upset us was when they blamed the soldiers and sailors and the airmen. I didn't personally get you know, abused by it so much, at least physically, but some of people did get, you know, they're throwing stuff at them. They were demonstrating against the soldiers and sailors and that coming back. And that was unfair. I mean, they weren't, none of them wanted to be there any more than the protesters did. So my feeling was protesting was okay, and just don't protest the government if you want to, or, you know, whatever, but not the people that are forced to do what they were doing. And my own sister went to Washington for the demonstration against Vietnam, and that was, I mean, that was fine. It was her choice, you know. And she didn't throw eggs at me when she came home, so I felt good. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate.
What years would this be around?
I was drafted in October 1966, and I was in service till December of 1972.
Oh, wow.
So when you were in the service, it seemed like you took a lot of steps to try to stay out of combat. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you obviously didn't want to go to the front line if you didn't have to.
I wanted to serve honorably. I had no thoughts of running to Canada or doing anything like that. I felt it was my duty to serve the country. I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I was, you know, for a lot of reasons. So I started out in basic and advanced in individual training like everyone else, and then they said, does anybody want to go to Officer Candidate School? And I asked how long that would take. They said about a year. I said, sure, because the war will be over. So I went off to Officer Candidate School. I was commissioned as an engineer officer. And I was about, well, there were two incidents. First, I was about to get commissioned, and they called me down to the order room and said, you can't be commissioned. I said, why not? They said, because of all your ailments and issues. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, I had forgotten, but when I was 18 and had to go get the physical for the draft, which you had to do back in those days, I marked yes on wet to bed, walking your sleep.
Thank you. My father did the same thing.
And so they said, you can't be commissioned. I said, well, I mean, I can get out of the Army? And they said, no, you'll just be enlisted. And I said, well, what does it take to cure that, you know, fix it? So you need a letter from your doctor. So I called Dad, and
Dad's
he
serious.
got a guy from down the hall, another doctor, to write a letter saying those were all childhood ailments and that I was cured. So I was able to get my commission, and then they said, does anybody want to go to flight school? And I said, how long would that take? And they said, about a year. And I said, yeah, because the war will be over. So that's how I ended up as a commissioned officer and a helicopter pilot. And now I'd already been in the military for over 2 years, and I owed them 4 years. So then I couldn't get out of going to Vietnam. So I went to Vietnam in 1969. I left right after Christmas in 69, spent all of 69 in Vietnam. And then I came back and I was a flight instructor for 2 years, and then I had orders to go back to Vietnam. And I said, why? You know, I'm training people that are going to Europe and places. They said, well, we need your experience over there. So I said, well, okay, but you gotta give me something en route to, you know. So they gave me airplane training, fixed wing training. So I did come out of the Army as a multi-engine instrument commercial pilot in fixed wing and in helicopter.
So I have a question about that. So did you do fixed wing in Vietnam or only helicopter?
Only helicopter. First tour I flew fixed wing with a friend of mine who had the mail route, and if I wasn't flying helicopters, I'd go fly with him. And second tour, I did fly. We were stationed on a Korean post. We supported the Korean White Horse Division, and they had bird dogs, which is a fixed wing spotter plane. So I'd occasionally go fly with them, but my primary duty was helicopters.
You measured your time flying in hours, both in helicopter and fixed wing. You want to share those stats?
Well, I've got 2,500 hours in helicopters and 1,500 hours of that is combat, and then I have another 2,500 hours in fixed wing. That's primarily as a flight instructor in civilian, flying out of Ann Arbor and Jackson, places like that.
You know, I'm jumping around a little bit, but so you, actually, no, let me stay where I am. So you described that piloting the helicopter felt very natural to you.
Yeah, both helicopters and airplanes, I don't.
Sorry, let me interrupt you just for 1 second. You said it was a part of me. That's how you described it.
Yeah, it was. My training was so intense and so compact. I mean, I had 200 hours when I went to Vietnam, and I had another 300 hours in Vietnam before I became an aircraft commander. And it was all in a compressed period of time that when I strapped in, I felt like I was part of the helicopter was part of me, and it just seemed so natural. And I think that probably saved my life a few times, because you always flew outside of what they call the envelope. It's guaranteed it can do this in combat, you take it out a little further. So,
Did this translate into driving a car? Are you an expert car driver, for example?
No. Car's a little different because you got people coming at you.
I'm kind of teasing you a little bit. Do you want to tell a story about this MG that you bought?
Well, I didn't know you knew that.
I did a little research on it.
Yeah, okay. So I had an MG when I was in the military, in the Army, and so quite a few years later, I decided I'd get another one. So I found one, and it didn't run, so we pushed it up on the trailer, and I hauled it home, and I parked it in our driveway. And the driveway was on kind of a slant, and I unhooked it, and I told Janet, I said, I'll back down to where the rails are, the tracks, so you can get it off the trailer. And as soon as I took it out of gear and started rolling backwards, I pushed the brake, and there were no brakes. And I just thought, well, I just hope I hit the rails good, coming down the square. And I did. I thought, wow, this is okay. When I get to the end of the house, I'll just turn it a little bit and lead off speed and stop in the backyard. When I got to the end of the house, I went to turn it, and the wheel wouldn't turn because the key wasn't in the ignition. So I went all the way across the yard and into the pond backwards.
All across the yard.
And it wasn't just a little bit into the pond. I mean, all you could see was the hood. And I'm thinking as I'm going, wow, how do I get out of this thing? And then, of course, I remember it was a convertible and there was no top. All I had to stand up. But there were two kids fishing on the dock, and they said, they're high school kids, and they said, Mr. Alford, we thought you brought it down to show it to us, but you went right on by. And I said, well, guys, all I ask is, and one of them had a truck, they pulled me out, which was great, and I said, I just appreciate if you didn't say anything, it was spring, and all the graduation parties were going on, and they spread out like disciples and told, I think, everybody in town, every graduation party I got to, they tell us about the MG. So, anyway, I thought that story had died a couple years ago.
It was told to me proudly, and you got to ask him about this. So it sounded like you were almost proud of this experience.
Well,
in retrospect,
I got it running, and I drove it for a few years. So yeah, and then people say, "Did the water hurt it?" I said, "No, it didn't run when it went in. Didn't run when it came out. They were good."
You are doing great. I just want to take a quick pause and see if anyone has a question they want to ask Jim. I know Jean wanted to say something. Do you want to do it now?
Sure.
You're going to be nice?
That'd be a first.
You'll remember it. Yeah.
You want this?
Anyway, I first met Jim, I kind of heard we were getting a new president or something, but I wasn't paying attention to that. And so we had our expo, and they put out, you could vote on for like an auction, silent auction. And I'm just looking at all the pages, you know, and there's this one for dinner with the new president of the world. So I ignored it. And then as I was going around, I realized that every single other chance on the auction had a name on it. Somebody had chosen that one to apply for. And there was this one. Now, I didn't know who this guy was, but I thought, gee, that's a shame. So I gave the minimum bid in the concept that it would get it rolling. It never rolled. So I won. And then I had to figure out that I had to go out with this man who I don't even know, even recognize, you know. And I talked to a couple of people, what the hell are we on the tractor? We didn't know him yet. So anyway, he set up lunch at Barbecue 52. And I was delightfully enjoyed myself something immense. He talked a lot about himself. We shared a lot of fun. I didn't think presidents of those organizations were very fun, but he was just a down-to-earth, normal guy. And at that time, we became friends. We still are.
That's a
Yeah.
nice story.
Thank you.
You should hear Jim's version of that.
Didn't you pay $1,000 for that or something?
Yeah, 30.
Okay, anyone else at the moment, or we'll keep moving? If you do, just raise your hand. So it was really cool how you learned that your first son was born. You were, part of a group called the Ghost Riders.
Yeah, Ghost Rider is my call sign in my second tour in Vietnam, and Janet was pregnant when I went off to Vietnam the second time, and that was in December of '71, so I spent '72 in Vietnam, and so I was coming back from a mission. It was in the evening or night, I forget which, but flying back, and it was pretty quiet. And then over the radios, Ghost Rider 3, this is the train radio. And we got a call from the Red Cross that your son was born. And it still gets me a little bit. And it would get all of you if you knew my son. But anyway, so universal acceptance or acknowledgement is 2 clicks on the mic on radio. So since they went up on guard to do this, which was a universal radio call or a radio frequency, I got click from all over Vietnam.
Oh, nice.
So probably 3 days later, I could get to a phone to call Janet, ask if she'd really had the baby and was it a boy and what'd she name it? She said she had no choice. And so it's James Alford III.
When you told me that story, you got choked up just like you are today.
Yeah.
It's very sweet.
I keep thinking after, 50-some years, I could tell it without, yeah. But it was pretty emotional.
It's very meaningful. So just wrapping up your military career, what would you say you got out of serving in general?
Well, going back to the beginning, I told you my college career was not real stellar, and I think the military really taught me, I could be successful and I could be mature. I could finish things, and it just taught me a lot about what it took to be successful. So after I got out of the service, I went back to the University of Georgia and finished my undergraduate, and then I went to Georgia State and did a graduate degree there. So I think my recommendation for most young people nowadays, if you're not sure, do something that will help you get some structure and get some maturity and decide what you want to do.
So I wonder what it was like to be a 26-year-old married father going back to college with all these 18-year-olds.
It was different. First of all, again, it's back on the campus, so you couldn't tell where you'd been, you know. You couldn't talk about Vietnam, your experiences or anything. You're just an old man sitting, you know, same row they are, and taking the freshman classes again. And I sold my uniforms and medals and everything else at garage sales, garage sale, and you know, just kind of put it all behind me at that time, and probably did for another 20, 25 years.
So I wondered about that. Did you sell everything to get rid of the memory, or what was the point? You didn't need the money, I assume.
No, I think I just,
Like that chapter was closed?
yeah, I just didn't want it. I have one shirt left with, it's a little small, it shrank over the years. But I have one shirt left from all the uniforms I had and all the flight and stuff. I did, years later, I wrote to somebody in the military, and they reissued all my medals and stuff, and I was very surprised at some of them I had, because they hadn't been awarded while I was in the service. I mean, they'd been awarded but not given to me, so it was surprising. So now I have them.
That's great. So let me close that chapter by saying, I wish you could feel the love of what you did for our country and the support that you deserve. But it sounds like you did some very heroic maneuvers, protecting people, saving lives.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom? I got a question.
Oh, yes, John. Go ahead.
Jim, I read a Vietnam helicopter pilot's memoir. It came out a long time ago, just 70s or something like that. And the one thing I remember from it is his description on how weird it was to learn how to fly a helicopter. Like physically, you're doing stuff that's kind of counterintuitive. And I'm just wondering, like, what your experience was, like the first time you were really, you know, driving the machine, so to speak. I mean, were you so well trained that it was, you know, it felt right, or was it difficult?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. To fly a helicopter, you have to be able to hover a helicopter. And what a hover is, you bring it up to about 3 feet and you hold it in one spot. So it's like I still, after, you know, 50-some years, this thing makes you go sideways, forward and backward. This makes you go up and down, and your feet keep it from going this way. So you're trying to keep it balanced on, you know, every axis. And the first time when first few times in a helicopter, the instructor pilot would be sitting there like this, and the helicopter would be perfectly steady. He'd say, okay, you take it. And the helicopter started going this way. I couldn't hold it over a football field. And then he'd take it and it'd stop. And he'd take it, and you know, it'd be all over the place and up and down and almost crash. And then finally one day it's like, whoa, it's happening, you know. And once you can hover it, you can fly it. So That's the critical thing. I mean, you still have to learn how to make your approaches and departures and stuff, but that's 90% of it, yeah. Yeah.
I was just wondering how your mom felt about your combat flying while you were over there. I was wondering if you could just.
Yeah, well, Mom wasn't real happy with Dad to begin with for taking me to the recruiting station. And I think she was scared, but she never let on, and I'm sure Dad was scared because he had lost a brother in World War II, you know, and I didn't realize what that was until my son went off to war. And I thought, wow, how did Mom and Dad get through this? Because I didn't. I mean, I don't know, maybe you know John O'Brien, he's my physician, but he had to put me on some medication to keep me sane while Jimmy was gone.
Did it help her knowing that you were mainly flying chaplains?
Well, yeah, you heard that. Yeah,
I don't know this story.
Well, I always told Mom I just flew the chaplains around on Sunday while I was over there. Mom, she wasn't gullible, but that's what she wanted to believe, so she believed it. It wasn't until later years that she found out I was actually flying in combat. Yeah.
You know, related to that, you told me a quote, I hope I wrote this down, about flying. You said, "I pulled up when you should have pushed down, and somehow it saved your life." Did I get that right?
No.
I figured that.
This refers to, I mean, you have a lot of, like I said, you fly outside the envelope, but you have a lot of issues. You're going into mountains, you're going into jungles, you know, when you're flying over there, you're overloaded. In this particular time, what they call the CNC ship, command and control, would go in, drop smoke, give you a wind indication when you're coming in for a landing, so you landed into the wind. And this happened to be on a peak, so it came up like that, and they kind of cut the peak off, and we were landing up there to let the troops out. And they called the wind wrong, so I went in with a tailwind instead of a headwind. I was loaded, and in a helicopter, when you're running out of power, you're running out of left pedal. In other words, you can't keep it from turning because of the torque, and the pedals are anti-torque. Well, when you're in a situation where you can't keep it straight and you're going down, the impulse is to pull up and get out of there. Well, if you pull up, it exacerbates that. So for whatever reason, reaction, again, like I said, in the helicopter, I felt like it was part of me. Instead of pulling up, I pushed down and slammed it down on the pinnacle and unloaded the guys, and then I was okay, because then it's lighter and I could get out of there. I didn't have nice words to say to the major flying the other aircraft.
Ann, go ahead.
A question. My husband was in Vietnam from 67 to 68, and you were there after that. So I know there was a big difference in discipline and kind of just a difference in the troops and how they felt about being in, you know, not everybody, but how they felt in Vietnam. Did you see that kind of difference because you did 2 tours?
Yeah, that's a good question. The units I was in were small units, and it was pretty tight-knit groups, because most of the people I dealt with were air crew, either pilots or gunners or crew chief. And there was some disciplinary issues, you know, probably a little more in 72 than there were in 69, but
Yeah.
But I didn't see it much as you might have seen in an infantry where you're dealing with a whole company or battalion or something.
Okay, let's, back in college now. You're 26 years old. What is the plan?
Well, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, then I figured out that veterinary school was very hard to get into. I did have a child. I decided I needed to get through quicker, so I did get an undergraduate degree in agriculture and majored in animal science, and I got involved in laboratory animal care, which was kind of ironic because you couldn't talk about Vietnam, you couldn't talk about working in research animals either. So I kind of went from the frying pan into the fire. And I look back as I was thinking about, this interview and everything, and so I look back, I think, well, I loved animals. I didn't get in there for the money or anything. I loved animals. And I really spent my career in laboratory animal medicine, making sure the animals were treated humanely, that they had everything they needed, and I really got in at the beginning, if you will, of animal care. I mean, as far as I worked for Dr. Ben Cohen, who was the father of laboratory animal medicine as we know it today, and I had an opportunity to work with him, and the development, the strides that have been made in the last, since the 70s is unbelievable. The animal care, the animal, everything they do with the animals is so much better. And so I was part of the team that did lab animal medicine accreditation, just like they do hospital accreditation. We went around it and made sure things were done right. When I worked with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, one of my jobs was to go around the country wherever they used animals in research and make sure those animals were treated well and things were done right. So yeah, I felt good about what I did there, and I don't know that I consciously did that, but that's the way it evolved.
So you did laboratory science with a twist.
Yeah.
With your master's.
Well, yeah, I got a master's in business administration because I saw that there was a need for administration and management. Most of the units were being run by veterinarians, and it wasn't that they weren't capable, but most of them that wasn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to do veterinary medicine, not necessarily management. So I saw a need for it and followed up with it. And that's how I got up to the University of Michigan, because I was one of the first in the field with laboratory animal technology certification, a degree in degree in animal science, and a master's in business administration. So they brought me up, and again, it's one of those. I think I just stumbled into it blindly, kind of, but it turned out that it became something that other universities started using that formula.
It's the standard now that
Pretty much, yeah.
How did you, this was in college that you came to this realization that I should maybe get an MBA? Just an observation you had?
Well, it didn't like I was a 20-year-old in college. I was 28 years old. I'd been an officer in the Army, and I think I had a little more vision looking around than I would if I'd been just a kid, and I don't know, most of my life, everything I did, I kind of stumbled into it. I think it's kind of the same. I stumbled in and thought, wow, this is working.
You also said to me once, everything is a stepping stone. That's one of your things that I wrote down.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow, and maybe something really good? Maybe not.
So in 1978, if I understand correctly, you moved from Georgia to U of M.
Right.
Is that right? And your job was manager of the laboratory science?
Yeah, I was associate director of laboratory animal medicine for the administration and operations of it, and that then allowed the veterinarians to do veterinary work and scientific work and grants and contracts and that sort of thing.
Big deal to move from Georgia and all your family? Not very popular?
Well, Janet thought we were moving to the tundra. She'd been born and raised in Georgia, and she had no idea what it looked like up here. And then we moved to Chelsea because I had an aunt and uncle that owned the dime store in Chelsea at the time. And so we stayed with them while we looked for houses, and the only house we found that was in Chelsea. We thought, well, we'll live there for a year or so and then move to Ann Arbor. And so that was 48 years ago. And we're still working on that Ann Arbor move. And I'm kind of glad we were in Chelsea, because I think had I been in Ann Arbor, I would have socialized and run around with university people. And it was really nice to get back to Chelsea in the evenings and weekends and not be talking university politics and that sort of thing. So.
Jan Burnett said the same thing last month, how they lived outside of East Lansing because they wanted to get out of the bubble. They lived in Mason for that same reason.
Right.
So then in 1990, you were recruited by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute.
Yeah. The Howard Hughes Medical Institute, it was created when Howard Hughes passed away, and they basically sold off all of his assets and created a research organization. And IRS said if we're either going to take all the money or you have to do research, you can't just fund research. So they had to hire scientists around the country. So like, for example, the University of Michigan, they hired several very good scientists to work for the Howard Hughes. They were still Michigan faculty, still had their labs at the University of Michigan, but Howard Hughes paid rent for the space they had and hired them and hired some of their employees so that they were doing research, they weren't just funding research. So I went to work for them to manage the labs in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. And then wherever they used animals in research around the country, I would travel there to make sure that was taken care of.
And then in 2003, I believe.
2003, the university hired me back to as director of operations for life sciences, and they were in the process of building a life sciences building on campus. So I was hired to help finish up that project, get the building operational, and I did that, and then there wasn't a job for me there, so I retired. My dad was ill at the time, so I retired, spent a little time with him before he passed away.
But you're overstating what you must have done. You had a building built to establish a life sciences department within the university. I mean, it must have been an enormous task.
Well, for me, it was the physical building and that. The ones that thought up the Life Science Institute were the real visionaries, because that building had what they called open laboratories, which was probably, I think, Jim might know better, but maybe the first on campus where they had open labs. So it was a whole new concept. Before, if you could visualize this being a lab building, there would be a scientist in this room, a scientist in that room, a scientist in the next room. And they weren't necessarily talking. And with the open lab concept, the scientists would have so much area, but didn't be a big room all the way down. And so this scientist said, if we had genetically defined mouse that would do this, we could do so much more, and someone down, you know, three aisles down go, hey, we have that, you know. And before, that kind of conversation wasn't going on, so it really, he came in, he had a 2x4 over his shoulder, and looked like Christ and the cross, you know, about to be crucified. And Janet had literally dived into the oven because so he wouldn't see her laughing. He came in and I said, JD, there's nowhere I can swing this in the house to hit you without breaking something. And then I started laughing, and he didn't really laugh or cry, but we finally, well, anyway, he didn't get a spanking that day. I told him, I said, you know, in the future, if somebody tells you to choose a weapon, don't choose something that's gonna kill you. So that's how I raised my kids.
That's a great story. Your family tells me things about you that are so complimentary. You always put family first.
I try to, yeah. That's been one of my things that protect the family, take care of the family, and believe in the family.
I know Mandy has a picture on her phone of, I know you take care of the humans, but it's a picture of you with Roy and your old dog in a car.
Oh, yeah.
And you were doing daycare for the dog or something.
I was doing daycare for the grand dog.
Yeah.
And I was doing Meals on Wheels, so Katie would sit in the back window and Elroy would sit in the back seat.
That's right.
So I took a selfie shooting back at them. But they would go on Meals on Wheels with me. And none of them ever ate a meal. John. I got a new dog now, Quincy. I'm training him to do Meals on Wheels.
Maybe one of the final things that we talked about was a very satisfying life.
Yeah, I really have had a good life. I mean, I've flown some good planes, I've ridden some good horses, and I've got a wife that's believed in me more than I believed in myself, and good family and good friends. It's been great. I don't think I would change anything. I mean, it worked out right. I think I should have been a lot smarter in high school and college starting out, but then I may not have the stories I have. So I don't know.
Those stories.
Those are good ones. I wondered if you had a message or something that you wanted to share.
Well, you know, when you get in your 80s and you look back, there's always things that you could have done differently probably, but I think you can't beat yourself up. I think you all lived a good life or you wouldn't be here, and you all had trauma and you probably all got through it somehow, either through faith or belief in your family or whatever. So I think the message is keep on keeping on.
That's great. Any final questions for Jim?
What happened to MG?
Well, I got it running. I drove it for a number of years, and although, ironically, whenever I got under it, something would fall on my face. I thought, well, where'd that come from? And then I realized it muck from the pond. 7 years later, but I ended up selling it. I got where I wasn't driving it very much, and it was taking up room in the garage. So.
John, have a question?
Yeah, this isn't really a question, just a kind of a comment. Jim, you probably don't remember this, but I've met you before at the Maudie's home.
Yeah.
And a long time ago, over 20 years ago, we were there for a pool party. And you were there, you and your wife were there, and I met you, and I was like, oh, that's a nice guy. you know, mellow dude and everything. And we started playing some kind of variation of water polo. And it was
Yeah.
like the dads.
Yeah.
You know, the kids were.
I can't remember that. You found my aggressive.
I was amazed at how athletic you were, especially when you were holding me under the water. And anyway, that was just a kind of a fun memory. And
That's why I don't play paddleball, because I'm afraid I'd die for it, you know, and kill myself. So, yeah. That's-
That is great, thanks, John. Anyone else? If not, this has been really fun.
Well, thank you all for
Yeah.
Oh, I
For
think
coming.
it's wonderful. I can tell you, I have many, many things that I didn't get to my father to right at the right time.
Yeah.
And I was so glad to hear some of yours. Thank you. That's a hard thing to do, because he didn't want to.
Yeah.
But you did, and you're giving a lot to people when you do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jim Alford, it has been my pleasure getting to know you. Thank you.
Thank you.